too smooth, that mud talking to have your ass in a wreck. Who's signing your check? Pussy better do what he says. We shutting down shows. Ain't gotta put no price in your head. Man, I'm coming for your tongue for all that shit that you said.
Gonna mix the profiles. Boom, 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 boom. What it is, I'm gonna tell you exactly what it is, gente. The RAZA, that's what it is, right? We're brown and proud, and we're gonna continue to strive and struggle to the next day, to the next light, to the next move, to the next whatever. We're going to make it happen as a gente, as a people. We're going to come together and we're going to drop profiles, right? And I'm going to do that for you right now, right here. You already know what it is. As you can tell by that thumbnail right there, we're talking about an individual who has more respect for me than probably anyone walking this earth besides my mother, right? And their brother and sister. Now trip out, my good old Theo Joe, right? In order to profile this man, I have to take it back. I have to talk about the turmoil in his life, and it's a crazy story, right? We're going to take it from a young age all the way to his death, his untimely and ultimate death. I miss him, right? Every day, you know, every dollar I make, he used to say, every dollar you make belongs to me. Every dollar I make belongs to you, Theo, right? Rest in peace. This is in memorial. This is a profile of my Theo, a real en soldado. And when I say en soldado, one of the original Northern Structure members, NUESTRA RAZA, one of the original ones who done it. All the way back in the late 80s when it was, or in the early 80s when it was established. He was right there on the forefront of Norteñoism. But anyways, prior to that, growing up in Oakland, California, you know, my Theo was part of a familia that wasn't the greatest family. You know, he had it hard as a young kid. You know, my uncle was born very hyperactive. What do they call that shit? ADHD. That's what he had. And in high definition, in 4K. In HD, he would bring it to you. He was very loud. He was very hyper. As a kid, he was bouncing all over the walls. He was all over the place. But he was a good kid. Never had ill will. Never had bad intentions. Never was trying to be a fuck up. It was just in him, right? This was all around him in Northern California. Growing up in Oakland, in the hood, the west side of Oakland, him, my mother, and his other siblings, I've seen a lot. You know, they've seen a lot of tragic events unfold right in front of them. And my grandmother was doing the best she could with her children, you know. So him being the middle child, of course, you get kind of lost in the shuffle. You get lost in the shuffle, but it's hard to really be lost in the shuffle when all the kids are pretty much lost or not thought about or taken care of the way they needed to be taken care of. Now, this is no slight on my grandmother. I love her. To this day, we're going to rock like a motherfucker, right? But I will say that her kids went through a lot. You know, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. It's an American tragedy. It's a Chicano tragedy. It's a fucking people tragedy. The way that these kids were treated. I'm talking about, I've heard stories where they slept in a car for 2 years. My mother, her brothers and sisters went through this, you know, going out asking for change from people so that they could eat, being moved from Oakland to LA, from LA to Oakland, here and there, different men involved, just a lot of things that happened. So my uncle growing up with this and going through this, some things that we've never experienced, not the normal people or normal kid experiences. You got to understand, man, they feel some type of way, you know. They grow up some type of way. They grow up a little bit colder, a little bit bolder from having the weight of the world on their shoulders. And this is the way my uncle grew up. Now, ultimately, as he became a teenager, he started to, you know, move in with certain people and live here and live there. You know, like I said, he had a very tumultuous life. He was all over the place with it. Eventually, my mother met my father, and they took in my Theo and pretty much raised him as a teenager because he had nowhere else to go. You know, my grandfather was working. He was too busy working. He was in the Bay Area in Newark, California, doing his thing with his familia. He took in a few of his kids, but he could only do so much. At the same time, my grandmother was out there wiggling, doing her thing, living that bar life, just not really focused on her children. And it's a cold situation. I'm not here to defecate on my family's character. It's just part of our history, part of what happened. It's life. It's a fact. So my uncle felt displaced. He felt like he didn't have too much going on, you know. So growing up as a teenager in Modesto, California, because that's where my mother and my father lived at this time. That's where they had met. They got their first little apartment. So I was scared. My mother was pregnant with me, and I was in there fucking like, bah, 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 bah. You know what I mean? Getting ready to come out to this world to collect for the collective, right? And at the same time, my uncle was a teenager, and he started to get into what was popular at that time for Chicanos, which was lowriders and being a cholo. And yes, he was a cholo to the motherfucking 14th degree, right? He had a 14th degree black belt in Norteño Choloism. Creased up, bands, tattoos, fucking hair. I remember he had the smoothest hair. It went back without even trying. Palm combs on the brocha, big old whip. He just looked the part, played the part, was the part. When you think about cholos, you think about norteños, you think about surenos, you think about Chicanos in general. He looked it, ate it, breathed it, smelled it, was it, right? And of course, being a youngster at that time, what was going around was the black, right? So my uncle immediately got involved in some spoonage. He got involved in the spoon, and this is where my character, Pedro Tupacas, is derived from my Tío Joe, right? This is a play off of him. So he got involved in the spoon. He got involved in, you know, a little blacky black, never hurt nobody, except for the RAZA, right? And he started to do that at a younger age. My mother started to notice. She would reprimand him for it. She would tell him it wasn't a good thing. Again, this was her brother. Brothers are going to do what they does. It was kind of like the movie American Me. No, Palito, right? Don't do it. Charlie, he's going to do it, right? And he started to get involved in what was happening on the calles at that time, which were gangs. Okay, and of course, growing up in Northern California, and he would go in between Oakland and Modesto all the time to visit familia in Oakland. He became well indoctrinated and educated into gang activities, right? And of course, he quickly became a norteño. That was the thing to be, you know, in the late 70s, early 80s, when it was starting to become established. You know, everybody was on that hype. Everybody in that era wanted to be somebody, you know. It was all about that bag. Again, even now, more so per se about that bag. But back then, Sasuke were trying to get that bag, right? And he was definitely one of those trying to get that bag so he can go buy him a bag. Bang, bang. So he started to be involved in a gang from Turlock, California. Living in Modesto, he would go hang out. I have a lot of familia, an extensive amount of family in Turlock, California, which is a small little town located right next to Modesto. He would go to Turlock on the west side and wiggle with an original gang that was there. Not a lot of people know about this barrio, but it's called Mighty High Street Locals, right? Mighty High Street. So he used to go hang around with these vatos from Mighty High Street. We had a lot of primos. You know, I'm talking about second, third generation for me. They were his primos that were involved in the gang. Shout out to my primo Paco, man. You know, my primo Junior, my primo Silent. All these real motherfuckers, you know what I mean? My primo Spider. So I can't condone what you did, but you know what it is. These were the ones that he kicked it with. You know, he posted up with. He was actually their inspiration because, like I said, he looked like the fucking cholo from fucking American Me. He was that one. Now, of course, he definitely was still in the spoon, so he was involved in a lot of that. And with that, and with gangbanging, it doesn't mix too well because you're not of a sound mind, man. So he started to get incarcerated at a very young age. He did a robbery, gets caught up, and now he's big time. Now he's in Tracy Prison. And this ain't Tracy Prison like I went to Tracy Prison. This ain't Tracy Prison like you went to Tracy. This is fucking Tracy, DVI, Gladiator School, get stabbed, thrown off the chair. Sasuke, what's for chow? Chicken. Psh, is that right? You know what I mean? That's what it is. It's big cinnamon rolls. It's bloody knives. It's pedazos. It's fucking placas. It's chirujos. It's everything. You know, everything that you see in the movie is what was going on in Tracy at this time. This was the early 80s. This is the real deal. Holyfield with 2 ears. This is what he was involved in. So around the time of him getting incarcerated, he gets sent to Mule Creek Prison. Now you're saying to yourself, nah, Charlie, gone Mule Creek, he was level. Absolutely not. Indubitably, when Mule Creek was first established, man, it was actually a functioning active yard to which my uncle was sent to, being from Northern California. So he was sent to Mule Creek, and he did a lot of tiempo there, and he got out. And I remember every time my uncle would get out, and I was a little kid, but I was able to recognize, and I looked up to him. He was the reason I became a norteño in the first place. He was the reason I did what I does, and I does what I did is because of the way he looked, the image that he portrayed to me. I thought it was cool, right? Really, I was boo-boo the fool. I was a pendejo, a baboso, and all that. But that's what I thought, you know, and he'd get out, and I always knew he was Malias. Right when he'd get out, he'd be like, man, you know, but where's it all at, right? And then later on, and he'd be on swole, getting out of prison, man. He was one of those dudes, if he touched the weight or even looked at one Sasuke, he blew up. I'm like that too. But him even more so, and he'd fucking get out on swole. I'd be like, look at my Theo, looking like a G. We'd have the little barbecue, the same old barbecue for Uncle Jailbird Joey that we always had. And he'd come out, whip on shit. Yeah, man, I got to meet up with the homeboys tonight because that's done. The wind's blowing, right? It's going down. Later on that night, he'd be in a sweater shaking. I already knew what time it was, my poor Theo, but at the same time, I loved him to death, right? Still do to this day, till we're going to rock till I'm back with him. You know what I mean? Sooner or later, I'll be there. But anyways, so growing up in these times, he would go in and out of prison. I remember him always getting out, coming to live with us or living with my grandmother, my grandfather, and then going right back in. Where's Uncle Joe? You know what I mean? Where do you think Uncle Joe's at? The store? No, another guest, puto. He's at the roller land skating? Nah, he don't do the skates. He's in prison. He's in fucking prison, mijo. Again, violation. You know what for? Heroin. And straight up. Anyways, he would go back and forth. And during his time of incarceration, he got involved with, at that time, what was being called the Northern Structure. I know it to be the NUESTRA RAZA because I also was involved in that organization. But he got involved at the beginning when the foundation was being set. And I remember him getting out, and on his back, he had a Virgin Mary, his whole back. And on the top, he had Northern, and on the bottom, it said Structure. And I remember he had a big old Huelga bird tattoo, and it said Viva mi gente on his hand. And I remember asking him about it. What is that? What structure? What? I can't even spell that. What is that, right? And he said, those are some questions you don't ask, right? But then he quickly gave me the rundown that he was part of, a prison organization at the time for the establishment of the people, to set a foundation and to establish yards for our gente. So that way, when we go down south and we're up north, we're able to have a stronghold. We're able to have a casa and household to be embraced into Chocanalismo, and basically for the betterment of the people, so we could struggle and strive for the social status of equality that we so rightfully deserved, right? And I was feeling all that. So I was taking in that education and soaking it. It was getting downloaded in my CD-ROM before we knew what CD-ROMs were. So I definitely was on that hype. But I remember him being one of the first members and him having homeboys that would come to the pad. At this time, my dad was already incarcerated, so he was in and out of the mix. But my uncle would always get out, come live with us, and they'd come to the pad, and we're talking about big old vatos, fucking muscles sticking on their cheeks, with NRs on their face, and fucking huelga birds on their cheek and their lip. And you could just tell that they've been around the block, and these were all Nuestra RAZA members. These were all Northern Structure members at that time. And they would have their little clandestine meetings in the garage, their little juntas, and I'd be ear hustling. And they'd tell me, get out of here, I'm gonna kick your fucking ass. And I'd be gone, right? Like the little fucking mocosa I was, I'd mob. But I was soaking up the knowledge. I was getting indoctrinated without even being indoctrinated, if you know what I'm saying. And that's how it is for kids, man. You see and you do what you see, period. So that's where he had that impact on me. But so he starts to go in and out of prison, like he's been doing. And somewhere along the lines, man, and I'm going to keep it real, my uncle contacted hepatitis. He contacted hepatitis. So I remember him getting out one year and having to take a whole bunch of pills and medication. And it tripped me out as a kid because my uncle was always physically fit. He was the one. So I was tripping why he had all this medicine to take. I didn't know. I was a young kid. I didn't know what was really going on here. And then he gets incarcerated another time and gets back in that spoon while incarcerated and contacts another disease, which is HIV, right? So he gets out positive with that. And I remember the family, this was at the time when Magic Johnson had it. It was the 90s, man. Everybody was tripping. And I was like, damn, Theo got that shit. I didn't even try to drink out the same cup, because we weren't aware. Everybody didn't know what was really going on. And not a lot of families, knew someone that had that shit. But Sasuke, he had it, right? And I remember he said, say, mijo, don't trip. Sasuke, hey, tell your fucking old lady, I little girlfriends, you know what I mean? Hey, does she got an older sister or mom? Tell her, Sasuke, I got something for her. I said, shit, you ain't. Sasuke, that's a murder, right? What are you trying to do, right? He wasn't tripping, right? He was quick to slip the clip in. But I will say that was just his character, man. He was a good dude. He was a righteous dude. He wasn't really trying to go that route. He was just clowning. He had a great personality. He had a tenacious, vicious attitude towards any opposition or any adversary. The education he instilled in me, not being the best education, but being the best education in life. If you're going to do what you do it to the fullest. Pull up and pop, Curry. You know what I mean? Do what you do. Don't never let anyone take anything from you. Don't never let anyone belittle you. Don't ever let anyone clown you. You got to hold yourself to a higher standard and carry yourself and conduct yourself for professionalism. I remember him telling me that over and over. He reiterated it until it was fucking permanently stuck in my head. And that's the way I conduct and carry myself to this day. And it's a man like that, of that character, that instilled it into me. When he was in prison, he was a very known individual. Okay. Did he get involved in NF politics and all that? Oh, he was definitely involved in the politics, but he never achieved that level because he was never striving for that level. He's from the old school. He's from when that was established, that was already around, but he just never found himself in that situation to become involved in it. And some people don't. Some people don't become involved in it, and it's not because they don't want to or they're not striving to. It's just they never meet with the right people at the right time and get a chance to become involved. So anyways, and like I said, man, maybe he did decline. Maybe he did get offered. Maybe he did get put up for a vote. Maybe things happened, but he didn't tell me everything. Fuck you. Half the time he was like, anyway, getting his issue. So anyways, my tío continues to go in and out of prison. And I've told the story before. One of the highlights of my life, and it's not even a positive a light, but it's a highlight of my life, was I actually met up with my tío in Tracy prison on the big yard. I called him. I had got out of prison, man. I'd been out for a little while, and I needed to go to parole, and I didn't have a ranfla at that time. I didn't have a carro to take me, and I get out of me, so I was like, watch out. Hey, fool, come pick me up, right? He's like, fuck you, degenerate, right? That's what he used to always call me, degenerate, right? And I was still active. He's like, fuck you, degenerate, I ain't coming to pick you up. So I got, hey, watch out, me and my old lady, we're going to go to Hometown Buffet. I'm about to get it in. Then you know what I'm going to do when I get home. I said, well, watch the game? Chale. I'm going to get in that bathroom, get in that spoon, homes, and get in my best life, right? So I'm like, watch, all right. Just give me a ride, fool. And he was like, fuck it. Just wait right there. I'm coming. So the vato never pulls up. Of course, my jefita's calling me. She's like, damn, your tío got locked up. He was drinking and driving. He threw out a beer right in front of a cop car. They pulled him over. So okay, he's in prison. He's going back to prison again, right? He got the DUI. A few months later, he ends up going to prison. I myself catch a violation about 3 months later. And I remember getting to Tracy on the yard, and way back in the bars is where all the norteños, on the right-hand side is where all the norteños posted up. And I could spot it from a mile away, man. And how he was there and able to fucking be on this yard with a big old fucking tattoo on his back that says structure will always boggle my mind. For the most part, they always fucking validated you and locked you down. But this vato was out there. Maybe because he was an older viejito at this time. He was old school. People weren't really tripping. I can't call it like an alcoholic, or maybe they thought he was just a cat. But he was an active homeboy. So I get out there and just doing pull-ups. And I remember walking up to him and I said, I'll slap that ass. And he was like, what? And he jumps down, he gives me a hug, shakes my bicep. He's all happy. He's like, damn, I can't believe we're on the yard together. And we were able to go to that yard together and to the next yard together before there was a removal. Yard went down. That was the last time I seen my tío until we were out on the calles. He ended up going to CRC, which is down south, because he had medical, it was a medical facility and had a lot of medical, issues. And of course, I ended up going to Susanville. Or Corcoran, Susanville. I forgot where I went at that time. But I think I went to Susanville. But whatever happens, happened. Anyways, so my tío, we get out. We get out, man, and it's just like old times. We're kicking it. He now sees me differently. He now respects me differently. He now treating me differently, right? And I always respect and love him for that, because where I was always the nephew, the shut up, Macoso, degenerate, right there, get over there, right? Let's get, hey, go give me a demo, right? What is that? You know what it is. But don't act like you ain't watched American Me. Go give me one, right? Or little puppet. Do it before I choke you out with toilet paper. So I was an equal. He treated me of equal status. He treated me like a camarada, like the embracement was real, like a homeboy. And I felt respected and I loved it. But at the same time, I loved being the nephew that got picked on and clowned on, because that was my tío. I respected him way above what I was doing. But it felt good and it felt bad. The yin and the yang. Anyways, after going through this life that he lived, and he met many women, he had children over the years. It wasn't necessarily in their lives like he wanted to be, but so motherfuckers do what they do. Not everything's perfect. He still was a good man. He still was a hard worker. He went through all his turmoils, his trials and tribulations, his aches and his pains to the head, to the dome by himself. He didn't fucking rely on anyone else to look out for him. He did everything his way, how he wanted to do it, man. And that's, you gotta respect that. You gotta respect that. He actually passed away a few years back. He was on his way again to come see me. And, he calls me. And I'll never forget the day he calls me. He's like, hey, mijo, trip out. I ain't gonna be able to make it. I said, why? He said, because I just shit my liver out. I said, stop it, bro. You're doing way too much. And at the end of his life, he ended up becoming a bad alcoholic, drinking a lot to compensate from doing drugs. He was trying to do the methadone thing, get off. And so he started to drink a lot, right? A lot. It was a sad situation. His vodka was down fucking 640s before you could say jumping jack flash, right? He was good with that. And he ended up catching cirrhosis of the liver. This man went through a lot in his life. And I remember him calling me and saying, I just shit my liver out. I said, stop. And he sent me a picture, and there was little pieces and chunks of blood. And I was like, good Lord, you need to get to the hospital. He did. I never see my tío again. That was it. He ended up going into cardiac arrest. They put a little clip inside of him. He went into cardiac arrest again. When they tried life-saving measures, the clip broke. He died of internal bleeding in 20 minutes. He was gone, right? And I remember his funeral, man, and he got a lot of respect. We had his funeral, of course, in Turlock, to which the city he claimed ultimately. And a lot of people showed up. He was part of the Modesto 49er mob. He's in several of their music videos. You know, they got little rap artists. He was in several of their music videos. I can see my Theo. I can relive it every day. I go on YouTube. There he is dancing and shit, clowning, you know what I mean, getting hyphy. And he didn't even know how to spell that shit. But it's nothing but respect. And I wanted to profile an individual like that because he deserves his name to be pushed out there no matter what. That's just what it is. I love my Theo. Till we rock together again, man. It's always going to be rest in peace, respect to one gangster, Teardrop Joe from motherfucking Turlock, California. Sometimes he said he was from Oakland. Sometimes he said he was from Turlock. It depended where he was at that time. He was one of those individuals. Anyways, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this profile. It's a true one. It's a real one. It means a lot to me. Thank you for viewing it. Hit that like and subscribe if you like this. If you don't, you can hit that thumbs down. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. We're going to continue to struggle and strive together as a people. Go out there and get it for your familia, raza. I want to say happy Easter to all the gente. It's mañana, man. Do something for your kids, man. Do something for yourself. Do something for everybody. The gun. Bang, bang. In that fashion.